Hello, everybody. Glad you could join us for episode number 37 of the Launch and Beyond podcast, a podcast designed to support you not only in achieving great success in your business, but also in other areas of life as well. Have you ever had a scenario where you've had a looming deadline or something that you had to get done by a certain time, but you couldn't get started with it? You knew you had to, but you couldn't bring yourself to do it for any number of reasons. Hours becoming days, days becoming weeks, weeks becoming months, months possibly becoming years. And Adam's shaking his head. Yes, I have done this in the past. As a result, you've been achieving less than you're capable of, underperforming, frustrated, and feeling stuck. Until such time as urgency shifts and now taking action shifts from a should to a must. Maybe the pain of not taking action now is far greater than it was previously. Well, if you can identify with this episode is for you. In this week's episode titled Stop Procrastinating, we discuss 6 of the most common reasons why people procrastinate, the 4 types of procrastinator, what such behaviour may really be about, and how you can shift it to become a person of action. We hope you enjoy it. Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Adam. It's a beautiful sunny morning here in Melbourne. Sounds like a oxymoron, sunny in Melbourne, but it definitely is. It's a beautiful day and promising to be a fantastic day for me to be out and about later on in the day. So good morning to you. How are you keeping, Adam?
Yeah, very good. Sounds like you want to go and have a double workout in the sun today.
I am busting too. Yes, I'm going to be doing that. My neighbours are cranking up the music in the background. We're still at home recording and I can hear activity and life outside. So I'm really keen to engage and partake and be a part of that. So yes, I'll be in the sun later on today.
Are you going to be one of those like St. Kilderites that St. Kilderites that were on the beach the other day? No masks.
We're in Melbourne. Yes, we're in Melbourne. I live in St Kilda West, which is Bayside, just up the road from where there was national coverage of people inciting, I wouldn't say riots, but expressing their need for freedom here in Melbourne. So I actually didn't see it. It wasn't there. But
the sun's told you about it.
I can feel the vibe from. It's probably only a couple hundred meters from my house. So I'm keen to be. It's packed. You walk up the Beaconsfield Parade here in Melbourne, which is Bayside. It's one of the road that links all the Bayside suburbs, and it's absolutely packed. Parks were packed. People were on the beach. I don't know, I just love that there's hive of activity, there's energy. That was Saturday, then Sunday bucketed down. So it was total contrast, but I'm going to get out and about and enjoy some sun later in today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same. I got 2 workouts, probably do 1 bike ride and then hopefully run. But my legs are jelly this week because I got some weights in. We've got some weights at home and I was like, you know what, I'll finally get into it. And I haven't done weights for about 3 months because gyms are closed. And I'm just like, been like hobbling around for the past 3 days and just go, oh, why did I do that to myself? But better now than later.
That's good. Good.
Yeah. How's your week been?
Mate, it's been a massive week, not only for me, but Australia across the board. We've had the national budget released this week, which from a business perspective, it was considered very pro-business. There's a lot of support in through there. And some of the initiatives that have been coming through are really designed to support businesses and really get momentum going. 99% of most companies in Australia will be eligible for instant asset write-offs, which means that the more investment in their companies, like for industries like yours in manufacturing, there's some massive incentives to get things moving. And so the government's really just got to throw everything at it to get momentum going and confidence going. So, and you saw immediate effects, not only in that, and enthusiasm in the stock market, there was massive ripple effects. People are, basically buy the hope, buy the story. That's what's going on. And a lot of stock market future values, not so much how things now, but in terms of prices in news as it's coming in. So they could definitely see the ripple and the implication coming through. But by the same token, there's also conflicting information coming through about, the deferrals and the impact that will have. So I know it's a challenging time, but it's also I look at it as an exciting time to make things happen if you're so inclined.
Yeah, well, you sort of touched on manufacturing, and what I've sort of had the philosophy of for a long time, but more so this year because obviously we've had our borders locked down, and to import anything has been taking longer and longer. So now to have Australian made on any item is awesome. So I've got these new caps for us at Adam's Bake Shop. I got the Australian flag on here because I just really want to push that Australian made topic,
Right.
because support local. Why not?
Yeah.
We've got so many jobs that can be made here
Yeah.
and move forward. So many businesses can start, and our government at this time, they're really trying to push it and move forward. And we want to bring back manufacturing to Australia. We don't want to buy everything from overseas.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
want jobs here. We want people to make money here. We want
Yeah.
our whole economy, our minimum wage to rise naturally, not forced. We want people to, you know, go, hey, we're actually worth this. And then the bosses to go, yeah, you are worth this. So here's your more money than what the minimum wage is.
Mm.
And that's what we want.
So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. And I imagine every country is looking at that as well. Every country is looking at stimulating their own local economies. Yes, um, basically having terms of trade on a global level progressing through. But yeah, look, it's really exciting. And our point of reference here is in Australia, so that's why we've got a very Australian-centric perspective on that. But that was considered very pro-business, and being as it is fundamentally a business-related podcast, that's really why that's the lens through which we're viewing things. So but being that as it may, right? We're talking about procrastination today, Adam, right?
Yeah.
And here's a whole lot of incentives, and yet there are going to be people who procrastinate, even with that. So this was planned before the budget was released, and I guess it's going to be really relevant to say that okay, all these things are happening. If you procrastinate, if you don't take action, things may not change. So for the people who are prepared and willing to use this as the spark that it's designed to be, will create momentum and inertia and jobs and stimulate the economy and grow and have a greater impact and influence in their own industry. So that's how I'm seeing it. I guess that's why I'm more excited about what's panned out as a result of that.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely heaps to be excited about. And what I believe the Australian government did was they put a 2-year limit on a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
which means that they're sort of understanding what society is like, but they're like, all right, well, we're going to give you $1 billion in road money or grants or whatever they do to the state government, but you've got 2 years to use it. So you better start building now
Yeah.
and give people jobs now,
Mm.
because we need to stimulate our economy. So they're almost taking away the procrastination, not like,
Yeah.
oh, we got the money in the kitty. We'll do that in 5 years, or we'll do that in
You
10
have
years.
got the blowtorch,
No,
basically.
you
To
got to
get.
do this now.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So let's use that energy as in the spirit in which to get stuck into this podcast, Adam, because we talk about procrastination, and so let's get stuck into it as a model for what people need to do, right? So
yep.
for people who may not be particularly clear on what procrastination is, perhaps I could start off by pronouncing it correctly. But procrastination is just an avoidance of doing something that needs to be done by a certain time. So you know that you need to get things done, but for one reason or another, you keep putting it off. And a lot of the times, the area most people can relate to, as particularly as having gone through school as a student, is the student who leaves everything to the last minute, intentionally delaying things. Hey, you've got 3 months to do this assignment, and there they are. They find themselves the day before doing an all-nighter to complete it. Why? Right? Well, this is what we're going to deep dive into, and it's really amazing. Is that for 2 months and nearly 30 days, no action, thinking about it, nothing happens. And then the day of, the day that it has to get done, it's like a pendulum. Something swings and it goes from a should to a must. And suddenly the afterburners go on and they've got to work like crazy to deliver it. They stay up all night, they get it done. And they'll get it done. But this whole purpose, this whole podcast episode is really about asking about, is there another way that you could be doing this so you don't go full on from full on acceleration to brake to full on acceleration and brake and the impact that comes with that?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sitting here laughing
You
because
were laughing. You were cracking up laughing, going, you're like the deer in the headlights.
there's two examples I want to say. First, Jim's always really good at getting the notes to me nice and early in the week, and I probably read it about 5 minutes before we start the podcast. So I'm like, yeah. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll read it tonight. I'll read it tomorrow. I'll read it tonight. I'll read it tomorrow, and then day off podcast, and I'm like, I haven't read it. What's it about? And it's procrastination. But I'm like, yeah, all right. At least I get the idea in before we record. But also, my book that I'm reading now for 75 Hard is The 4 Hour Work Week with
Yep.
written by Tim Ferriss.
Yep.
And I think the last page that I was reading, or second last page I was reading last night, was the fact that he was doing an essay in his uni course, his college course, and he interviewed two high up people, and then due to legal reasons, he couldn't publish that paper. So he went to his lecturer the day before the paper was due and go, hey, I need an extension because I did two people. I can't legally publish it. Their legal team said it's not right. We can't do it. So I need to find someone else. And the lecturer goes, no, you'll be right. You'll find out. And he goes, no, it's less than 24 hours to do this. And started panicking. And then he found a new source that he could interview, wrote the paper. It was a 30-page document, 24 hours. It turned from a should to a must. And then he submitted it, and he said it was his best grade ever. And that was because it went from being a should to a must. I have to do this. I have to submit it. Worked bucket loads of coffee, kind of like what I've had this morning. But it just changed his mindset that I need to get this done or I'm going to fail this subject. And he turned around and he did it. And it's been funny because I've been listening to an audiobook this week, and it's called Unleash the Power Within by Tony Robbins. And again, exact same topic. I didn't read, I understood what the topic was this week, stop procrastinating. But it's funny how so many parts of your life when you're in sync come through what you read or what you listen to. And it came in this week. And the biggest topic I took away from Tony Robbins was turn a should into a must. I should be healthy. I must be healthy. Maybe I should change my diet. I should change my diet. Oh, I must change my diet. And then that's it. You change how you talk to yourself and the results follow.
And look, a lot of it, you're spot on. And one of the things that Tony Robbins does talk about is the power of making a decision and being decisive, because the number one trait of most successful people is decisiveness. Whether that plays out in health, business, whatever, it's the ability to make a decision. And procrastinating or putting off making those decisions rob you in some way, shape, or form. So you're right. What I'm taking out of what you're saying about Tim Ferriss's example is it's amazing what we can do when we have to. And all that aside, that's fantastic. What I want to deep dive into, really look at, is why do we procrastinate? Why do we know we can deliver hugely on things when we have to, when the bases are loaded and everything's riding on it, you've got to do it. Is there another way that we can come about it so we don't have to keep putting ourselves under those kind of loads? So that's what's going to be really interesting. Exactly. Like, man, when things have to get done, I know what I can deliver. But at some point, some stage, there's going to be a toll that happens for you and to you. Either you're a prick to be around, either you exert massive impact and effect on your health and well-being. It helps you deliver on an outcome, but then the next project is terrible. So what I want to look at is there a model moving forward that we can shift things to help you stopping procrastinating? And I think there is. And we'll talk about that specifically in there as well. So, but just on that too, it's not, but there's a big overlay between procrastination and people think that it's laziness. And a lot of times it's not about laziness at all. It's something that people, there's an active part of procrastinating where you willingly make a decision not to do something, not just I can't be bothered, but what you do almost is you say, here I am now. I'm going to future pace myself. I'm going to go into the future where I've done it. That's not exciting. I'm going to come back here and deliberately not do it. Or I don't have enough references. I don't have enough reasons to do this now. So I'm going to deliberately put it off. So that's a big decision, a big distinction between that is it's not about laziness. It's about, for some reason, there are secondary benefits that are coming in not doing something than in actually doing them. So even though we know logically, yes, I could be doing this, I should be doing this, for one reason or another, we're just not inspired to do them because there's too much and too many benefits in staying doing what you're doing or not doing than actually basically pulling the trigger and getting started.
Well, as well, like some people undervalue their time. No, how do I say it? They undercalculate the time
Yep.
that a task takes. So
Yep.
that, oh, it'll just take 10 minutes. I'll do that at the end of the day, just before I go home, just
Yep.
before I leave the office. Or, you know, I'm going to do a 20-minute walk. So I can do that, after dinner, I'll do the 20-minute walk. It'll help me digest. And then you get after dinner and you're full and you're just like, actually, I'm probably a bit too full to go for a walk. I don't think I'll go. Maybe I'll do it in, an hour or something once I've digested. And then it gets to 9 o'clock. Then it gets to 10 o'clock at night. And then you're like, you know what? It's a bit too late to go for this walk now. I don't want
Mm.
to go for the walk anymore. And then sometimes procrastination just means you don't do it at all.
Yep.
Sometimes procrastination means you leave it to the last minute, like an assignment. Other
Hmm.
times procrastination could be you just don't do it at all,
Yep.
and then it just falls off your list. Oh,
Yep.
it's all right. Tomorrow I'll do a bit longer of a walk. That'll be fine. Yeah, yeah. And then when tomorrow comes around, you just do that 20-minute walk that you should have done yesterday,
Mm.
and you haven't made up your extra 20 minutes today. And that's the cycle that it keeps going through.
Yep. And it's true because if there's no payoff, if there's no punishment, if there's no immediate effect for not doing it, human nature in a lot of ways is to go, well, I'll put it off. And sometimes I'll put it off indefinitely. And as I mentioned at the start, that can become days, weeks, months, or even years. So what we're looking at is you won't always see the immediate effect of your procrastination. But at some point in line, there's going to be a price you've got to pay. There's going to be a toll for doing that. And if you're in the scenario where you constantly go, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep leaving things to the last minute? Part of it is you're addicted to the adrenaline. Part of it is you're addicted to the feeling of going, I've got to be so laser focused. And I've got high performing people and clients that I have who are really accomplished people who love and thrive in that scenario, love the ability to wait until the last minute has to happen. And I'm going to talk about that as we go along. But what it does, they deliver, but it stresses a lot of people around them who are waiting on that process. Because if you're part of a process relies on the person before you get done by 9 o'clock Monday, and you're like Sunday at 10 o'clock at night, you're waiting again, they haven't started it. Naturally, you're going to go, are you going to be able to deliver on this? And they're going, yeah, take it easy. But you stress the next person down the line.
Yeah.
So they may not be a person who thrives under pressure. So consequently, you got two people who are not as efficient. And this is the impact and implication that has. So yes, it can be an adrenaline rush for a lot of people. I know there's certain things that I thrive under certain types of pressure, and others I just go, that's not where I do my best work. So I'm going to build in processes and systems to avoid that happening so that I can deliver on an outcome and also not deplete myself at the same time.
Yeah, I see this a lot in kitchens, like commercial kitchens. You've got, especially fine dining, we call them a brigade, and you've got different people on the line. It's sort of, to use like military terms, but you'll have someone on a veg section, someone on a meat section, someone on sauce section, and then someone on the salad. And then you've got your head chef who puts the dish together. So if one of those falls behind, even by 30 seconds or a minute, the next one goes back, and
Yep.
then the next one. And then all of a sudden, your last meal is 30 minutes behind because it just took an extra 20 seconds, 10 seconds here and there. So when you walk into a kitchen, there's massive adrenaline, massive stress, and you walk in, you're having fun and you're doing what you're doing. And to come off on a service that is so timely and to come out that everyone got their dish on time, it's
Yep.
one of the biggest adrenaline rushes that, and this sounds silly, but it's something that I can't naturally find anywhere. Like, sometimes when you're on a big party having some good alcohol, I don't do any
Mm, mm,
other curricular
mm.
stuff, but if you're having a good party, like in the middle of the dance floor, and you're sort of feeling that adrenaline, and you have a couple of drinks, and that just amplifies it. That's what a good service in a kitchen feels like, and that's because everything worked together. There was no procrastination. There was no one off sync. Everyone was just working together on a team, and I can attest to how great that feels when no one's
Yeah.
procrastinating and the communication's there and
Yeah.
everyone understands what everyone else is going to do.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. You're talking about being in the zone, in flow, right?
Yep.
And that's exactly right. And great people, even most recently when we had the in-house guys, and they're talking about the ability to just come together and just create and whatever that's what winning teams, that's what that feeling is all about. And it's a little bit different to procrastination. When you're in the flow, we love it. You're in the zone, you're in the flow, you're doing stuff. And that in and of itself, for most people, is an addictive period. Most people try to get to flow states as often as they can.
Yeah.
It doesn't help them get there if they're constantly procrastinating. But sometimes what happens is by necessity, they force themselves into that scenario because they've got to get it done. And then they're in that hyper vigilant, hyper focused state. But it's like a laser beam. The laser beam is so powerful, it can cut through the strongest materials, but it's not designed to last for a long period of time. And you can't keep that laser on indefinitely because it'll burn out the cathode ray. And
Yeah.
so consequently, and the tube. So it's designed for short spurts for in there. And if you're constantly trying to keep that laser on, you'll burn out.
It'll burn out, but also use a phenomenal amount of energy.
Yeah, correct.
So you're using the energy as well as burning out. And
Yeah,
sometimes you don't have the energy to recover or to
yeah,
replace the burnt out parts. You're just
yeah,
done. You're just
yeah,
completely finished.
yeah. So I see this play out all the time. So this is why I'm asking another question: is to go, okay, well, let's assume that you need to operate at a level of 60 to 70%. And this is what we find with high performing athletes, is they don't go from 0 to 100, and 100 being their peak state. You can't stay in that hyper focused state for too long because it depletes you,
Mm.
right? And this is the impact of the effect and the toll that procrastination has, is that it puts you in a state where you're just, everything's cranking and it's great and it's awesome while it lasts. But as you said, it cooks everything else around you. But what happens is most athletes, high level athletes, understand that they've got to function at 60 to 70% pretty much all the time and have the ability to go from 60 to 70 to 100 in a nanosecond or within a short period of time, so that the toll it takes on their system is minimal, and they can be in the optimum state that they need to when they need to. If they've got to go from 0 to 100, akin to procrastinating and not doing anything, to that, it takes a huge toll. And that's where injuries happen. And it's the same principle. So if as a model you apply this to go, okay, if you can get stuff done and appreciate that sometimes you're going to get into that flow state and you're going to create magical things happening, then that's awesome. But it's more a case of going, why do you have to go from 0 to 100 and all that comes with that? Um, is there a better way to go about it? That's really the underlying question about the whole thing.
Yeah, well, David Goggins talks about when he does ultra marathons
Mm.
and stuff like this, and he's got his chest strap, so he checks his
Mm.
beats per minute, and he reckons that he trains best and executes best when he's in zone 2 or zone 3, which is about 60 to 70, 75
Yeah.
roughly percent. So he knows that his heart rate is sitting, and it's funny because he did this, and then when I started running a bit more often, I started looking at my heart rate and going, what's my comfort zone? And it was the exact same number. So it's obviously a rule that works across the board. And he says 148 beats per minute. That's where he can comfortably run for distance,
Yeah.
and once I hit my stride and I get into that pattern, 148 to 150, I'm happy
Yeah.
because I know I can sustain this. But I'm
Yeah.
not going 100% because if I go and I try and hit my threshold, I burn out.
Yeah, and really what that is from breaking it down to a cell biology level, right, and an input and output thing. So what's happening is when you're running in that optimum range, technically speaking, you're replenishing the cell at the same rate that you're eliminating toxins and waste. So effectively, you're not overtaxing at a cellular level. So as long as the input and output are balanced out evenly, you can keep that going on for a long time. That's the whole oxygenation process. When you're putting huge demands on the system, i.e. anaerobically, meaning without the use of oxygen, and you're really putting maximum efforts, there's a finite amount of time that you can keep doing that. So as a model, if you overlay that with in terms of how you go about life, and that's really the realizations that I've gotten to is, um, I used to love the short, sharp spurts and the intensity of things, and that's great. It used to take a lot out of me as a result, right? And so consequently, I've modified how I go about things. So I might be doing things at, like you said, like a lower intensity level, but for a lot longer. And that as a result has allowed me to perform better and longer without the depletions.
Yeah, well,
So,
I noticed it this week when I was running because I was like, you know what, I'm going to slow down,
yep,
and I slowed down. I didn't stop running the whole time, the whole 45-minute workout, which was one of the first times that I've done it, but I consciously slowed my speed down. And then in the end, I burnt the most calories according to my watch. I wouldn't say it's, amazing, but the most calories I burnt was slowing down a little bit,
yep,
but sustaining that workout the whole time, that
yep,
constant pressure rather than wanting to hit the threshold. And I guess that's the analogy for procrastination. If you're constantly working towards something, you don't tire as much as if you leave it for the last second, because that's where the burnout will be. You can push it really quickly for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but then your body starts taking the toll.
yep, yeah.
And
So
that's
it's a
the
different, yeah, you're using different energy systems within the body,
Yep.
and the principle's exactly the same everywhere else. So we've given an example of the application of that within a health and a fitness model. Let's have a look at some of the reasons why people do procrastinate in the first place, right? And why is it that we've touched on some of them, but there's 6 points. There's 6 reasons traditionally why most people will procrastinate. And number one reason, or not necessarily the biggest reason, but one of the reasons is a skill deficiency or self efficacy. So effectively, what that means is that people perceive that they don't have the skill or the knowledge to do something, and as a result of that, they don't do anything at all. I don't know how to do that. And my biggest one, I'll put my hand on heart and say, look, it's technologically, right? There's some areas that I get tripped up on, and as a result of that, I've got a skill deficiency. And now I've found a compensation for that is I recruit people to help me do that. But if it was left to my own devices, I'm in an area that I don't have, I may have a deficiency of understanding, I'll get overwhelmed, or consequently, I'll go, it's too hard. I won't do anything at all. And so many times, this is the area that people get tripped up in. So there needs to be a strategy and a process around how do you overcome those skill deficiencies and those restrictions in self, so they don't become a permanent obstacle to you achieving your objectives.
YouTube.
YouTube's a great one. That's a great
Yeah.
strategy.
Well,
That's a
well,
great.
whenever I get caught up on anything, I look on YouTube. I'll dedicate half an hour, dedicate an hour, watch 4 or 5 videos, maybe read an article that I've just Googled or something, and then I've got a base knowledge. So now that I've got the base knowledge, I can apply it to the situation. And
Mm,
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
yeah.
But
So,
I learned that that's not the process. So I go to the next step, which was in
yeah,
the next video, and then I go to the next one, and eventually I'll work it out. But I do take that time
yeah,
because if I take 5 hours now, it's going to save me 20 hours later, or 50 hours later, or 100 hours.
yeah.
So I'll take that time up front.
Yeah, and basically, what this does when there's a skill deficiency or you don't feel you have the tools and talents to do that, it does create a level of overwhelm. And what you've highlighted there specifically was overwhelm is really not knowing what the next step is in a lot of ways. And so you have used YouTube as the step that you go to that helps you get clear on what the next step is. And that's a strategy and that's a pathway. And so if people can apply that to other areas of their life as well, that's going to be a great blueprint for how you cycle through that skill deficiency and self efficacy that I was talking about.
Well, one of the things I realized when I was doing coaching with you is I wasn't necessarily deficient in skills. It was more the fact that I just didn't know the next step.
Hmm.
And I didn't know, and I put emphasis on no, was because I didn't think I knew.
Yep.
But you asked me a few simple questions, and it turns out I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And that's
Yep.
the reason why having a coach, whether or not it's physical situation, business, personal, having coaches in your lives or that support team, they just shine a different light on it. And
Yep.
you probably do know the answer most of the times. You're just
Mm.
not confident enough to move forward in it.
Yep.
And as you and I don't want to, I know it's a sad time, but you spoke about your coach John,
Mm.
and saying that he saw more in you than you saw in yourself.
Mm, mm.
And that's why it's good to always have a coach in your life, because they will shine that light when you need it.
Yeah,
And it's not because you didn't have the skills. He saw you had the skills. You just hadn't realized it yet.
yeah.
And
And yeah, I agree. I agree. And there's a big distinction between coaching and mentoring as
yeah,
well, because in coaching, quite often people will help. A coach will help you through the process of asking questions, help you identify your own answers. And sometimes it's just highlighting your blind spots, putting up a mirror and going, "Hey, have you considered this, this, and this?" So mentoring traditionally, and this is part of the reason why I sought out my coach John in the first place, because he was also a mentor. He was a person who could model the pathway for me, and so that made up for some of the technical deficiencies or areas that I needed support in as well. And so you can get that information through YouTube. You can get that through other people. You can get that through resources. There's infinite ways of making up for lack of technical um, know-how. And you've highlighted really well two great reasons and two great ways of leveraging what you do know and looking for solutions outside of self. So spot on, right? So they're the scenarios, and that's one of your success strategies, Adam. Is that you go and say, okay, I don't know what it is. I'm going to go and find it.
yep.
Most people, a lot of people who start getting overwhelmed, get stuck in that scenario and go, I don't know what to do. So I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah,
And
shelf the
that's,
idea.
yeah, but pretty much. And so effectively they become frozen and paralyzed and stuck in that place because they don't have a pathway out. And as a result, it's going to be coming across as procrastination. It is procrastination because you're taking anything off, any action, because you don't know what the action is. And from someone looking outside of it who's seeing you underperforming, they're going to look at it and go, well, they're just lazy. No, they're
Yeah.
not. They're just overwhelmed. They haven't got a strategy. They don't know what to do next.
Well,
Right.
that's it.
So,
There's that judgment that comes across, and that's also why some people procrastinate, because they fear that judgment. Oh, if I don't turn out right the first time, people
yeah.
are going to judge me.
Yep.
So it's easier for me to sort of do it silently and behind my doors in my own time, and then you sort of procrastinate because you put it on your own time schedule because you don't want to be big and bold.
Yep.
When you put something out in the universe and you go, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and you don't do it, people come and call you out.
Yep.
They love
Yep.
doing that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who love doing that.
Yeah. And so how I use that as a success strategy is I proclaim it to those people who would brickbat me straight away because I don't want to cop it from them. So
Yep.
that's what I do. If I'm prepared to do something really big and audacious, that's scary. The first thing that I do, one of my success strategies, is I tell people straight away that I'm doing that,
Yeah.
because that way there is no way in the world I'm backing out.
There's no procrastination
There's
there.
no procrastination because I got a lot on the line,
Yeah.
and that leverages and loads the bases up on myself to ensure that I do that. So that's what I do. Is it confronting? Does it really challenge you and basically set you up for being humiliated if you don't follow through? Yeah, but to me, that's how I do it, and I put leverage on myself to get it done. So you will have seen that happen many times where I'm letting you know that I'm doing this right now and I'm proclaiming it, and
Yeah.
that's just me leveling up.
Yeah. Well, you have to level up.
Yeah. So the second reason why people may procrastinate, and this is the one that comes up quite regularly for me, is just a lack of interest. You're just not interested in it. And just because someone else is so enthusiastic and excited and passionate about a particular project doesn't mean that it's going to float your boat either. So I can talk to people about a particular topic and I'm fueled by their enthusiasm about it, but there is no way in the world that is of interest to me.
Mm.
And so it doesn't matter how enthusiastic they are about it, it's not transferable to me. So if I've got to find something that my heart and head just aren't in, then I'm naturally going to go, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested in it. I can't find the enthusiasm for it. I'm going to put it off. Right.
So basically, we're talking about TikTok again.
TikTok, that's a very big lack of interest. That's just a no-go zone. But you
But
know
there's
what?
so much organic growth on the platform.
That's great. That's great. Well, this is where I lean on you and say, okay, Adam, let's do it through that way, but not for me. But the reason why, people will avoid or delay jobs that they're not interested in, even if they know that, hey, if you do this, I'll give you an example. TikTok is an example. It's like lack of interest for me in that. I know that that would leverage elements of it. I know that that would be, but I just go, I'm not interested in it, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that you can't, but it just means that I just go, I'm just not interested in it. And how many times are people in a scenario in business where they go, hey, all I need to do is just do this, and I could earn $50,000 more, 100 grand more. I'm just not interested in it. And people logically go, what do you mean? That's just a really easy way. And they go, I have no desire to do that whatsoever. So this
Yeah.
is why people change directions, careers, all whole things.
Well, that's what I found recently, sort of, and I've come programmed as a food service machine. You know, food service is where you get the big sales. You know, you go to we go to all the nursing homes. We go through New South Wales Health is our biggest customer for our fruitcakes and stuff like this. So these are big departments. They order pallets of food at a time. And then I turn around and go, do I really want to go to retail stores? Do I really want to service, you know, the smaller guys? And you know what? A sale's a sale.
Mm,
But for many years, because I was in the food service industry and I was at
yep,
the trade shows and I saw the
yep,
people and I was selling the big amounts, my mind was like, retail's bad.
yeah,
That doesn't interest me. I know food service. Food service is where I live. I thrive. I survive. You know, I move forward. But recently, I'm like, why wouldn't I put that? It's just another feather in my bow. Is that the
yep,
term? You know,
yep,
I just want to move forward, and you know, a sale is a sale, and that's what I came to in the long run. I want to move towards, and then you think about it logically. If you go retail, you can get pallet buyers. Costco
mm,
buys retail, Coles and Woolies, the major supermarkets, they buy pallets at a time as well. It's just a different avenue that I
yep,
wasn't familiar with.
yep,
So I had a lack of interest at the start, but then I thought deeper on the topic and I'm like, actually, no, let's flip that. So now, as you said, I could be building 50,000, 100,000, $200,000 worth of more profit because
yep,
I just opened up a different avenue that
yep,
I had a lack of interest in the past.
yep. So you either develop an interest in that area or you find a different strategy. You leverage with someone who may find it interesting and collaborate and work with them in there as well. So that they're the strategies to use that to move forward. So if we just recap for people who are listening, so one of the first reasons why you may procrastinate is a skill deficiency. Number two, a lack of interest. The third reason quite often is a lack of motivation. And how many times, Adam, have we felt? I'm going to use this as an example in terms of training, where you just don't feel like doing it, and you talk your way out of it. I don't feel inspired. I don't feel really great doing it, so I'll just put it off, put it off, put it off. And so many times, the discipline of movement helps you identify your motivation. So you don't quite often get motivated at the start and then take action. You start taking action, and in the process of taking action, you then become inspired. You then become connected with your why. And so many times, some of the best training sessions that I've ever had are the ones that I just didn't want to do it. I could not be bothered. I found every reason in the world not to, and yet I got my ass out there and I did it. And in there, either I found something within myself, I connected with what, or I just got my body moving enough for my emotions to then to catch up. So that's pretty much what motivation is motive in action. But you've got to start the action part first, right?
Yeah, yep, that's so true. And it's funny because when I'm on 75 hard, should becomes a must. I
Yeah.
must work out twice a day. There's times where I don't want to work out, of course. Like, you know, there's times where I'm sitting on the couch just after dinner and I've had a long day at work. So I got one workout in and just had dinner. I'm lying down watching a movie, watching a TV show. I'm like, you know what? I could just miss this workout,
Mm.
but it's a must. It's
Yeah.
not negotiable. I
Yeah.
get up and do what I got to do.
Yeah.
That's when I'm on 75 hard, there's so much motivation. When I'm off it, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And I think now that Jim's doing his third time around, I think he understands he's a motivated guy normally, but when a should becomes a must,
Mm.
life becomes better.
Yeah.
And that's why I prefer almost to be on 75 hard now than not to be on 75
Yeah.
because shoulds become musts. I must read 10 pages every day.
Yeah.
In my 2 months off, I didn't read one page of a book.
Yeah.
I was still learning on, the internet and YouTube and all that, but I wasn't reading books. And me being 1 month into this 75 hard, I've read 2 books now, and my mind's just in a different space.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I was listening to the Tony Robbins audio book and reading the Tim Ferriss book. It's actually hitting the exact topic that we're talking about today. And it's like everything aligns when your shoulds turn into a must.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a big distinction I want to draw here, the difference between inspiration and motivation, because motivation a lot of times for most people is an external driver. And you might be motivated to do something because of a particular objective or outcome, but inspiration generally comes from within. And so if you can tap into both, if you can be inspired by the direction you're going in and have the courage to take that first step, whatever that is. And we've used an example in exercise, but it's applicable everywhere else. It could be public speaking. It could be any other area, an avenue that you want to explore or follow through. It's about starting. It's about being inspired to do what you're doing and then taking and using the energy and motion to get to basically progress that process. That's really what motivation is about. But it's starting that and not putting that off, not waiting until you feel enthusiastic about it. It's about just starting it and finding within you the enthusiasm as the process goes. That's going to help a lot. Okay. So that's the third point, basically lack of motivation. The fourth reason why people procrastinate is the fear of failure. Now, we've talked a lot about perfectionism before, Adam, in a previous podcast, and this comes back again. Part of the reasons why people procrastinate is that fear of not being 100% perfect. So if they are in a scenario where they feel like this isn't going to be a great effort, this is going to be a permanent stain on their reputation, and it's not going to be great, they'll put it off. Look, I don't put out anything unless it's 100% perfect. Well, that's great, but that becomes such a rigid model that you don't evolve, you don't progress, you don't get movement. And this is how and why people who are committed to a lifestyle or a process of excellence end up exceeding and far outshining people who are perfectionists, even though perfectionists have got a huge benefit and put out a high standard. They're not prepared to be lousy. And so because of that, they don't do anything.
Yeah. It also builds your toolbox. If you fail, you go, all right, well, that tool wasn't right for the job, so I'm going to go out to the shops and buy a new tool.
Yep.
That's right for the job. And then you build that and you put that in your toolbox. So next time, you got to change a pipe, you got the proper wrench to open it up. If you've got to change a spark plug and you're using the wrong size, or you're using a 12 millimeter where it should be a 14, but you didn't have the 14 before, you go to the shops, you get it. It's better than persisting with a 12. And then, you can't get the 12. So you're just like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to change the spark plugs today. And then because you're constantly worried about failing because you're not using the right tools. So for me, if I fail, it means I've just got to go down a different avenue, learn a new tool, learn a new skill, and come back in and continue that job.
Yeah.
Failure is not scary for me.
Yeah. But that's that particular mindset. We've covered that before in previous podcasts when we talked about excellence and perfectionism, the fixed and the growth mindset. This is the relationship to that again, where it's the willingness to be prepared to fail, but not see it as a failure. Look at it as a learning opportunity, as an iteration to actually say, okay, what did I learn here, and how can I go again? How can I use that in the pursuit of excellence and get better and better and better with all the feedback I get? And that's a really big process. But what happens for people who are perfectionists, who can't come to the idea that it's going to be less than 100%, they'd rather not do it at all. So consequently, they're going to put it off, and that costs them in a big way.
Yeah, it does. And for instance, we recently painted our house, and through painting the house, I had to patch up some parts on the wall. And I'm not a builder, I'm not a construction guy. I've seen videos, so I just attempted it, and sometimes it didn't work the first time. But it's my house, so I can just attempt it again and attempt it again. And then after the job was complete, it looked pretty good. I won't say it looks perfect because, there's always better, as we were saying. It's not perfect, but it's excellent. And people have come into the house since we've done it and gone, hey, you really did a great job. And I'm like, remember that patch that was here, or we changed the light bulbs here? And they're like, wow, I couldn't even tell. And even though I can see the difference, when people come in, they're like, wow, you did a great job. And
Mm.
that was because we didn't fear the failure. We
Yeah.
just go, hey, let's learn this skill.
Yeah.
Let's learn how to patch a hole. Let's learn how to sand it back, make it look inconspicuous, and then paint over it, and the people won't know the difference.
Yeah.
If I was waiting to be perfect all the time, I would have never picked up the paintbrush or the
Yeah.
plaster at the first beginning.
Yeah. No, as I said, I've mentioned before, that's a strategy that you use that serves you well. It's one of your success strategies, right? So that's overcoming that fear of failure. The fifth point, which is the flip of that, is the fear of success, right? So it's just hard to believe when people have a fear of failure that you could be fearful of success, but it happens for quite a few people. To some people, success equals pressure and stress. And when they think about achieving more, they only think about the negative parts of that. That's going to expose them. That's going to be, they're going to be under more pressure. The more expectations that people have and demands of you. So as a result of that, as a result of what they perceive will be a higher level of pain or stress for them, they put stuff off. And this is the part where we were talking about in terms of in the business part of it, it could lead you up to a level of success. You don't want it, so you put things off. And this is where people subconsciously start I'll start that again. People start self-sabotaging themselves because of that fear of success. So consequently, they'll put things off they know that have worked for them very well before because they've got this gear shift or gift sort of gear problem in their brain that's not allowing them to reconcile the benefits of being successful.
Yeah, and we touched on this in leveling up, the
Mm,
last podcast. Some people don't want to level up because they don't want to leave their family or friends behind. You know, if they become successful, they're going to need to have new friends and new family, and I've got to learn a different life, and I'm going to get a bigger house, so I'm going to move to a different suburb, and I'm not going to have all these things that I've grown to love now. And that's why some people are fearful of success because they fear that they're going to change who their core values are. They're going
yep,
to change the people who are around them.
yep,
But it's the way that you play out the situation. If you become successful and you earn $10 million, who's saying you have to buy a new house?
mm,
Who's saying you have to move away from your friends and your family and all that? No one.
mm,
But that's the fear that you're building into your own mind. That's the story you're telling yourself. If I become successful, I have to change everything about me. No, that's that story that you tell yourself.
mm,
And people procrastinate because they're just like, I don't want to change that. I'm happy where I am. I'm content making my $50,000 a year because that gives me enough money to do what I need to do at the moment. Or I'm happy making $100,000 a year because that makes me do what I want to do.
mm,
The object of making $1 million goes, oh, I got to change my whole life. I've got to travel more. I've got to
mm.
change all my core beliefs. And then people are just like, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. It happens quite a lot and quite a bit for people who, particularly in this space, part of our listeners, the people in business who may have been exhibiting a level of success, who don't want to stand out, who don't want to lose elements of friendships, peer groups, etc. So they'll consequently shine their light less bright than it could be for fear of success because of what they perceive it will cost them. So it's a really important one of procrastination, and it links into self-sabotage, which you mentioned before. So rounding out the sixth reason why people may procrastinate, and this is it's very common actually. When I was reviewing this, there's quite a few people that I know who are like this, and that is there's a resistance that comes from procrastinating, and by resisting, there's a rebelliousness. And what I mean by that is they'll procrastinate because they don't want to do what other people are telling them to do, right? So they'll delay taking action because they perceive that they're losing control. They're not doing what they want. So consequently, they'll put it off. And when we feel like, one of the biggest drivers of human psychology is autonomy, is to have power and control over self and your own decision and your what's called self-determinism in terms of the direction that you're going. And if you don't feel like you are in control, but some people will create a resistance or a rebelliousness around doing anything. So consequently, they'll put stuff off. They know they need to, but they don't want to. And so consequently, they subconsciously claim back control where they perceive they may not have it before.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I
Mm.
understand that it's, you know, a rebel without a cause type thing. You know,
Yeah,
people just want to rebel just to go, hey, you know, I'm the one that's standing out. But sometimes they do it and they're actually hurting themselves more than
yeah,
helping themselves.
yeah. So that's exactly right. So Adam, we're going to move into the types of procrastinators now. This is really quite illuminating for a lot of people because a lot of people will see themselves in here in these next four examples. And so many times when I've been working with people, I'll quite often ask them, okay, why are you doing this? And almost 95%, these four reasons will come up every time. So I think you'll agree with me as we're going through this. You'll go, okay, I know such and such does it this way. I've done it this way before, etc. So let's go through these four reasons or four different types of procrastinators and what quite often it will mean. And we're also going to go through some specific solutions for them as well. So the first type of procrastinator is the performer, the one who says, look, I just work really well under pressure. Okay. Have you ever come across those type of people? Yeah.
Me,
Okay.
it's me.
All right. So these type of people, the performers, Adam, force themselves to focus on the output by shrinking time. So they try and decrease the amount of time available so that they can perform at the highest level. And like you just said earlier on about time in the kitchen and whatever, you execute at a really high level. You thrive, you're in flow, you do fantastic stuff, you're on tight time schedules. So you don't have the option of not making it happen. It's got to work really, really well. Um, and at the core of this, a lot of these people are um, there's perfectionism behind this as well, subconsciously, because people who love this type of intention or this type of role are the ones who are perfectionists. They love delivering a really high product process. They're addicted to the feeling of what it's like to be in that flow state. They produce a high quality of work and standard in this level, but it's not sustainable, which you mentioned before. So a lot of the times these are old habits that people fall back into. And the biggest challenge for people like this is just the process of getting started. It's defer, defer, defer. The moment, like we said, that it ticks into it has to get done, they just thrive and they get in there. But the problem, like we mentioned before, is the toll that I see that this takes on people is huge because it impacts on their health. It impacts on, like I said to you, you might have a project that has to be done right now and finished by 9 o'clock, but the next project you're going to drop the ball on because you're depleted, you're exhausted and tired. So what happens for these type of ones is there's the continuity and the momentum don't build. They're very static. They're very geared towards one particular time frame. So you tend to find people who like doing this tend to be attracted back to this for the benefits that they get.
Yeah, like when I had my catering company, catering events at a certain time, and it is food, so
Mm,
you have to cook it fresh. But there's a lot of things you can do in preparation 2 or 3 days before. Like, you know, you can clean your meat the day before, you can seal it off. And then
mm,
when you're about to cook it, you put it in the ovens and take it. That's how many people do it. But me, I'm like, nah, we can do this all in one day or
mm,
maybe 2 days. And I might do the pre-prep, like make risotto
mm.
or like for the arancini, let
Yep,
that cool down the day before so that I could crumb it. But that would be
yep,
like everything else was done that day.
yep,
And my mum always says to me, she's like, when you work amazingly. When
yep,
you put your head to it, you can conquer the world because the way I work in that pressure situation is phenomenal.
yep,
I can do what three chefs can do in one kitchen. And
yep,
that's a gloat. Yeah, of course, I'll
yep,
gloat like that. But I do thrive well under pressure. But then during that day, I won't eat properly. I won't drink enough water. I
yep,
might drink beers because I'm like, you know what? I'm working hard. I've earned my beers. And then I'll serve everyone all their food. Once that's done, what do? Pack up the van, take everything back home, go to Macca's, get 5 cheeseburgers or,
yeah,
you know, a couple Big Macs, couple chips, drink, you know, a couple liters of Coke, get home, have some scotch, have some beers. And then my whole body is just like,
yeah,
oh, why'd you do that to me? And I was like, all right, I work really well, but I neglect so much of my life and my
yeah,
body and my mind that afterwards I'm just like, oh, can't do that every day.
yeah, yeah.
I physically feel the burnout.
Yeah. So the biggest health impacts are like you just said, health,
Yeah.
diet, and a big factor that's showing up a lot is adrenal fatigue.
Mm.
So people get so depleted that their adrenal glands just shut down, right? So they're cooked basically. So that's what you're setting yourself up for. So the biggest challenge with the performers here is, like we said, is just getting started earlier. It feels counterintuitive, but it's really important to rewire your brain in terms of the benefits of that. Still being able to go into that zone, but not the effect that you're exhausted. So a great solution here that I found works really well is changing the perspective from a due date, DUE, to a do date, DO, right? This is the day I'm going to do this, and having the discipline to do it on that day for people, and rewiring, using the advantages of what needs to happen to bring it forward. So that's a really simple strategy to incorporate and do that, but then also to link up a lot of benefits to doing things in a different way as well. So that's one type of procrastinator. Adam, you've mentioned that in there as well. I think you may also relate a little bit to this number two as well, which is the self-deprecator who says, look, I'm just being really lazy right now. And what I mean by that is they're actually not lazy. They're in fact they're the other way. And any time that they're not cranking, they're not working really hard, they consider it and they judge themselves as being lazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really hard on myself. So they tend to blame inaction on laziness or stubbornness rather than admit they're just tired.
Yeah.
Right. So consequently, they just, a lot of the time for these kind of people, it's not beating themselves up even further, right? It's actually being compassionate with themselves and having the awareness to go, hey, I really am tired. I really am tired. And, the biggest challenge here is to actually admit that you are and taking a break. And the first thing that's going to come up, and this is, I've got an element of this one, I've got to be honest, is you'll probably say that, look, I just don't have time right now to be um, to slow down and tired. So that'll play out. It's not as drastic as the first one, but these were the ones that subconsciously shows in for people. Anytime that procrastinating, they're judging, and they're not admitting that it's not actually laziness themselves. It's just that they're exhausted.
Yeah. And I'm sort of halfway, or maybe a quarter of the way through the 4-hour work week,
Yeah.
and I've identified sort of this notion previously, but now that I'm reading it in a book, it's a well articulated version of what I was thinking, and I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of work.
Mm,
When people say, "Oh, I'm going to work," it's this 9 to 5 mentality or 8 to 6, whatever your job is, but that's your job. It's
mm,
not when you actually work. You don't actually go and execute for that 8 to 6 or 9 to 5 time. So I find that a few years ago, I found that almost like the less time that I worked, the more efficient I became.
mm.
And that was when I redefined the less time I spend at my job, the more efficient I became because I was actually working. So I would work 4 hours, get the same job I would do in 8 hours or 9 hours, but then I'd have more time to take care of myself.
Mm.
And that meant that I wasn't self-deprivating. I wasn't hurting myself more because I was actually doing what I was required for me in my work day, but not spending all day at a job. So I wasn't getting so lazy anymore. I was just executing
Mm.
and going to live my life and enjoying my life. And that's when I shifted my mindset, because instead of your due date, you do your due date.
Mm.
Because what do I do today? And Andy Frisella says it on his power list. You go, these are the 5 things I want to complete. If you complete it by 10 o'clock, enjoy your life. Go
Mm.
work out, go sit in the sun, go read a book, do whatever you want,
Mm.
because you do what you need to do. But if you got a list of 20 things, or if you got a list that, oh yeah, or you don't even have a list, you forget stuff. And then that goes to tomorrow, next
Yeah.
week, next month, next year. So you work more because you're just chasing your tail because you haven't got your list. You start burning out, or I'm so lazy, or I've got no time, because you haven't set stuff. And what Jim always says is what gets scheduled gets done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you schedule a smaller amount, you do your proper work for those few hours, and then the rest of the day is for yourself.
Yeah.
You get to look after you.
Mm.
you don't feel lazy because you don't burn out.
Yeah. So that's a really big important one in there as well, and which kind of leads us into the third type of procrastinator, Adam. And this is it's called the overbooker, and someone who says, "I'm just so busy. I'm busy, 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 busy." And you talk to people like that. You see them, and there's a tendency to overcommit to themselves to the point of overwhelm, right? So, like I said, they're gonna say, I'm so busy right now." And but it's really interesting that sometimes some of the busiest people are the people who get stuff done.
Mm.
Right, it's really interesting because you talked about efficiencies and productivity. So you got a lot on your plate, but people can rely on you to get things done. Why? Because you've got a system around task prioritization and getting stuff done. You don't think about it, you just do. You get in and get stuff done. And but the biggest thing about the overbookers here is it's not so much the procrastination that they're not doing anything, but it's they're actually doing so many things as a means of avoiding doing certain other things, right? So here's what I mean by procrastination. So you might have a particular objective and task, let's say to maintain your health, but you're creating chaos in your environment by overscheduling all these other things. That means that you're not getting to your health priority. And so consequently, what that will mean is that you're avoiding what really needs to get done. And so this is the biggest thing that we find with these type of procrastinators is they're creating chaos to avoid facing what they need to do and face right now. And a lot of times it's not actually a task, it's a bigger introspection. So the biggest thing to ask yourself and to get real clarity on here is, what am I really avoiding by doing this?
Yeah, sorry for everyone who's watching. My video's just died, and I don't have a backup power. So
That's okay.
I'll keep talking over. I'll keep talking, and it'll come over good on audio, but on
Yeah,
visual, I saw Jim like looking around. His face is frozen because my face is frozen.
the
But
show must go on. So I just, if anybody who was watching that, I've just suddenly gone, okay, Adam's there. Have we got a technical issue here? What's going on? Just keep talking because it'll make it in the B-roll.
yeah,
And,
yeah. Well, yeah.
okay,
So it's gonna be your face for most of this. So good luck to you.
all right,
Don't do
okay,
anything weird when I'm talking.
okay. No, that's so that's a third type of basically procrastinator. The one who's so busy, Adam, who's to the point of overscheduling, but really because they're doing it to hide from something else or to avoid something else. So consequently, it's considered as procrastination because they're not getting things completed because they're basically avoiding things.
Yeah, when you're too busy, you put everything on the back of the pile because your list just constantly grows.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
uh, when you overbook, let's use the example like Andy says. Andy Frazella says 5 tasks are good. If you have 5, you complete those 5. Doesn't mean you can't go on to your next 5. Just means that 5 is good and you build your positive momentum. But if you got 20 on your list and you can get through 15 in a day, then you got 5 that roll over to tomorrow. So then there's 25 for tomorrow. And then you can only get through 15 again because that's how much you can work.
mm,
Then 10 rolls over to tomorrow. So the next day, the third day, you got 30, but you can only do 15. So the next day becomes 45. And then all of a sudden you're too busy. So everything goes on the back burner, on the back burner. And then all of a sudden you're just like, I've got so much work. I can't
mm,
do it. And then you go, you know what? It's just too much. I can't do this. And then all of a sudden you take a step back. You go, I can't work like this forever because I've just got too much work.
yeah,
That's because you're scheduling too much. You're overbooking yourself.
yeah, mm,
You should be realistic. If you can only do 10 things a day, book 10. If you can do 8, book 8.
mm,
But you build your positive momentum, you win your day, you don't get too tired and go, oh, I'm so lazy right now because I haven't done those extra 5 things on the first day or the extra 10 on the second day. And then you move forward. You're not so busy, you're not so lazy because whatever's scheduled gets done.
mm,
And
yeah,
you build that positive momentum. You don't procrastinate. You keep moving forward.
yeah. That's the strategy of that. So point number 4, as the fourth type of procrastinator, is the novelty seeker, the people who are the ideas people, and they're also known as the people who suffer from shiny object syndrome. right? So they're constantly coming up with new projects to take on. They get bored with them a week later. They get they get basically intrigued with the new trends, and they start following on different pathways. And they've got great ideas. They take action up until a point. So you will see this with a lot of entrepreneurs and visionaries. And out of all four, this is the one that I can relate with the most. So I've I'm always inspired. I love the big picture. I've got 55,000 different ideas. I get stuff done. What I've actually learned for myself is I'll be a phenomenal start to 30% person. And I've now built in processes and systems for someone who's a 30% to end person, a middle and a closer. I've recruited people in multiple areas of my world who are great middle and closers, so stuff gets done. Because otherwise, you have unrealized potential. You've got all these great ideas that just circulate but never go anywhere. And for me, I'm very highly accountable. And so the moment that I've got it broken down, I can direct my focus to those action steps. But because I'm so inspired by the big picture of it, that's not the logical part that comes to me first. So the biggest challenge for people like this and like myself, which I've mentioned, is basically the completion. You'll get to 70% sometimes, and that's as far as it'll go. Or the renovator who's got all these great projects around the house and yet never actually completes them.
Yeah.
This is the, because there's something going, hey, yeah, but we might do the we might do the bedroom now, but you don't actually complete them all. So the solution is, like I said, is number one, accountability and action steps that you follow through. You do one and then you do the other one and then you do the other one. You don't jump to point 17 or a new project until you execute it, or you recruit, like I said, people who complement your own skill sets to allow you to collaborate and get projects in the pipeline going, so that you're working on both each other's strengths, and you're staying in your optimum state of function and in your lane.
With accountability, and you want to complete your steps, and a good way to do it is writing down everything. And this is something that I'm learning more and more, is you've got to put down steps, and Jim calls them action steps. And when I was doing coaching with him, we always used to have action steps. What are we going to do next week? Or what are your results going to be? And then you sit down and you actually think about them, and then you complete them. I was always the bad student, so I'd do it about 10 minutes before the call. And he knew every time. He was just like, Adam, I think you could go back and reflect a little bit better on these, and maybe do it again. And Jim is always really cool like that. He'll call me out when I'm not doing my best stuff, and he leads me to that accountability and that completion. And again, we talk about coaching. Once you have that coach, they almost enhance you, and it stops you procrastinating, because they're like, well, why am I here if you're not going to complete this? So it's always pretty cool to have someone like Jim around. But I am a visionary just like him. And this is one of the hardest things I find being a starting up entrepreneur, is that I always have these ideas, but I turn around and there's no team to help me sort of finish them off. And I wish I did have that team, but I don't at the moment. So what do? I bite off just a little bit less than what I would normally bite off, so that I can sit there and go, all right, this is the idea. How do I do it so that I can totally execute this and complete it? Because if I don't do that, it doesn't get done. It just
Yeah,
falls off track.
yeah. And it's a really interesting place to be at, where my poor long suffering wife is probably sick and tired of all the ideas and all the concepts. And within our family, she'll quite often go, look, every time you go, hey honey, I was just thinking, she just goes, oh my gosh, there's like, you've just dropped the bomb on 70 hours of work that you don't even see that goes there. But for me, because I'm staying in that first third, I don't realize the impacts of it. And if I had to follow it through, I've got a way of looking at it. I go, look, I need to capture those ideas, but I can't work on all of them at the same time. So I might have 16 ideas. And so what I've now done is, anytime I've got a concept or an idea, I jot them down. I write them down. I get as much information that I can about the concepts, idea, and vision, whatever, etc. And then I release them. I let them go. Or I pass them on to somebody else to make sense of those, and then build the action steps.
Yep.
And so here's where I find, because like you just said, Adam, spot on. You can decrease the number of projects you work on yourself, or like I said to you, I just realized I'm not as good in that range. I'm not as good in that zone. So I'm I'm now trying to say, okay, how do I capture those concepts and ideas and the frames and leverage all those great things? And how can I then pass it on to someone who can do this and build a process and system around it? So I might have 20 ideas that might take 10 years to come to fruition, but I don't want to stop the flow of them right now. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And for instance, that's the part of my life in business that I'm getting towards, right? And basically, what I'm outlining is that I've got this packaging here. It's like a pudding container, and then I've got another packaging here. I know where to get this packaging from, but who will do the designs for the box? In the old days, I'd sit here and try and work out how to use Photoshop for hours or AI. When now I just delegate it to a designer. I've got a
Yeah.
trusted designer. Everything I need to do goes to them,
Yeah.
because in the end, I'd be sitting on my computer for 10 hours and trying to design this box, make it look beautiful. And then it becomes too hard. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll finish this tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
finish this the next day. Now I'll go, you know what? I've got a designer that I trust. I love everything you do. You know my style now because we've worked together for a little while. This is what I want. This is the dimensions. Make me something.
Hmm.
And I put the trust in them. If
Yeah.
there's something I really hate, I'll take it off. But
Yeah.
most of the time, I just give them the trust because that means I don't have to do that job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that doesn't go to the back of the pile because it gets done because I've got someone. And
Yeah.
the first question they say is, "When do you want this done?" And my first answer is yesterday. So
Yesterday. Yeah.
let's just get it done.
Yeah.
Like, don't put it on a deadline, because the
Yeah.
second they put it like, oh, I've got 2 weeks with this, it
Yeah.
never comes out to be their best work.
Yeah.
So let's just do this as soon as possible.
Yeah. So Adam, that's where people like you and I frustrate the daylight out of people who work with time frames like that, right? And so, to get an insight into how I do that, I will document what I want, where I want it to go, what I want it to look like, and that way I've got a capture system that then will go into, um, for me, either I've got to explain as a concept meeting. So I've got to, and for us, it's usually my wife Bettina, who is one of the rare people who can actually go big picture and detail at the same time. Not a lot of
Mm,
people can do that, but she does that really well. So what she's able to do is grab that concept from me in terms of what I want to do and be able to break it down to something. And then, so she might capture it, or I might talk to our PA who's got a similar ability, and we'll capture it. And then they'll build a frame and a system around that. They'll then go into something like an accountability step, like we use Monday.com. So at any point, everybody knows where in the cycle, in the process, that where something is, and we've got action steps, time frames, everything that's done by. And so what these people do is that they'll say to me, right, we've got it all mapped out. What we need from you is this, this, and this, and we're going to plug that content into the system, and that keeps the process going. And so to me, that's how that's worked. And so that way we're delivering on outcomes. We've partnered with groups that I mentioned before about in-house create, who were on our podcast last week. They have expectations and timeframes and timelines that they want things from me by, that I deliver on. So consequently, I can work to that timeframe as part of a system, as part of a bigger overarching system. So that's, a lot of people may not be in that scenario, and I get it, where you can work in different parts, but that's how I've made it work. That's how it can go to that place for people where, if you're not great at it, find a way, like you just said, Adam, where you go, I could spend 10 hours here, or I could spend 9.75 hours working on my core business, my core competencies that earn me money, and make the decision that 15 minutes to give someone a brief, a spec on how to do things so they can do it. And
yeah.
that'll save me time. And they're going to generally do it better, faster, quicker, and more efficiently than I could.
Well, that leads into point 3 as well. You sort of outlined something using Monday.com. And I remember when I started with a consulting company about 4 years ago now, And I walked in, and one person had everything on their computer, another person had everything on their computer, and me walking in as a brand new guy going, all right, what do I do? And I had no clue. And I was always messaging people, can you send me this? Can you send me that? Can you send me this? And then I said to them, hey, how about we go onto a digital platform, something like a OneDrive or a Google Drive,
Yep.
Dropbox, something so that we can all read what we've got. So then when we do a recipe, it tells you when it's been updated and
Yep.
who updated it. So did you do the work? Yes, it's been updated. It's here. And that took out the level of being busy,
Yep.
because we'd all be on the same wavelength. Everyone can see what's happening. I don't have to stop, call you, text you, go, hey, can you email me this? Because then, yeah, sure, I'll email you in an hour. And then that gets procrastinated. That means my work goes back an hour. And as Jim outlined earlier, that person delaying that 1 hour leads me to be delayed an hour, which could be really delayed 2 hours, because by the time I got to respond back, it's just this endless cycle of delays. So how do you avoid that? And using something like monday.com, where you can see where everyone's at on a project, is an amazing way.
Mm.
But some people are just not open to that. And it becomes very difficult to work in an environment that's toxic in that way.
Yeah.
I tried to push that drive so hard, and in the end, no. So when I work with that company, it just becomes very time consuming. We
Yeah.
could do everything
Yeah.
so much quicker.
It affects your efficiencies, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. If I'm going to be able to do all the things that I'm planning on doing, I need to have operating systems that optimize what I do and create efficiencies in processes for the people around me to allow them to do what they do. So it's the cohesiveness of all of that is what makes it happen. So, Adam, you mentioned about action steps. Let's close out with some action steps if people so choose to follow through that would help them stop procrastinating. So there are 6 of them, which I think would be really helpful if this is an area that you find is bottlenecking your success, or you're feeling stuck in. Consider following through these 6 steps. Number 1 is just to be honest with yourself and get really, really clear on why you're putting off taking action. Is it fear? Is it boredom? Is it overwhelm? Is it lack of motivation or interest? Any one of those, but just get really, really clear on why you're not taking action. Okay. Action step number 2, if this is a recurring pattern or behavior, ask yourself, what else in your life are you procrastinating? Where else are you doing that? You'll find that it's not necessarily just in one area. It's usually the variety of areas that you are doing this in, and that will give you a clue or an understanding at a deeper level of why you're doing this. Point number 3, and this is going to be a really interesting one, is asking yourself, what are you benefiting from in procrastinating? Because a lot of times people say, oh, there's no benefit to it. I should be doing this, but at some point you're getting some kind of benefit. Maybe it's that you don't have to lean in and confront your fear of rejection. Maybe it's that you're doubting yourself, and by procrastinating, you don't have to find out whether you're good enough or not. So there's usually a benefit in procrastinating. You just got to get clear on what that is and being honest with yourself. Point number 4, and we've touched on this a lot, is what is procrastinating costing you? Whether it's in your health, whether it's in the fact that you don't make agreements with yourself that you honor, so consequently your own self-esteem is compromised, and that way you don't back yourself. So the more times you make agreements with yourself that you honor, your own self-esteem, your own self-worth, your own self-validation gets stronger and better. So consequently, you'll back yourself in more projects, you'll back yourself in more decisions. And the next level is impacting on and the impact that it has on other people. So like I mentioned, you may be okay just parachuting into the 11th hour and delivering at a high level, and that's great, but you're going to cook your whole team around you. And so just get really, really clear on what is it that procrastination is costing you, and is that a big enough reason to change how you go about things. Point number 5, and just a reminder, we've got some show notes that you can access on our website. Adam will let us know at the end of this where you can do that. But all that we've covered and these action steps will be there. So you don't have to memorize them all. Just refer to them if it's something that will be of benefit to you. So Point number 5, if you do procrastinate, identify any of the types mentioned earlier on in the podcast and ask yourself specific recommendations for each of these categories. A solution might be, so if you are a person who fails to get started, if you are the kind of person who, by virtue of being more compassionate with yourself, would help you overcome your procrastination. Getting clear on yourself in terms of being honest with yourself or following things through. What type of procrastinator are you? And as a result of identifying what that kind of procrastination type is, you'll know what your action steps are in that area. And finally, the 6th area, and this is the one that helps change things at a brain level, that really creates transformation and lasting change, is linking reasons why and benefits why a change is actually a really good thing. So if you come up with, and a lot of the coaches that I've had over time, a lot of the transformational people I've worked with always said, if you link 100 reasons or 100 benefits of why this is important and why taking action is important, you'll break the habit and behavior of procrastination and start setting up a new identity, a new pathway moving forward. Adam, outlining those 6 points, anything that stands out for you, anything you want to add to that before we finish up?
No, just closing out. I agree with what you said in the first statement, changing shoulds into musts. I think that is critical, and that stops procrastination. And changing your wording and the stories that you tell to yourself is massive in your journey. And I believe that everyone should get a good support team, people that they trust. Like for me, doing accounts is not my best use of time, I should say. I did study accounting in uni. Don't like it. That's why I'm not an accountant. So find a team who supports you. So when I go to do accounts, I take photos, send it off to my accountants, they do my books. When I need designs done, I send it off to a designer, they do my designs. So then I get there and I schedule my things, and my things on my to-do list are musts now. Then I execute the 4 or 5 musts, and then I'm done. And then that way my day is done. I can finish by 1 o'clock and I can do my 2 workouts for the day in the afternoon, sit down, focus really big on my nutrition. And that way my health doesn't suffer. My mind doesn't suffer from being, too busy, because I've started delegating. I've started moving around stuff. And then at the same time, the happy benefit that I get from this is that I can become more of a visionary, because I'm taking care of my health. I'm taking care of my mind. I'm reading. I'm eating right. That gives my being time to sort of have downtime and learn and reflect, and then go, what will really give me ultimate growth towards the end? And then I don't procrastinate anymore, because I'm constantly in that growth mindset rather than that fixed or that perfectionist. I'm constantly growing for excellence. But yeah, that's it.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Adam. A good synthesis and some summary and some great action steps for people if they so choose. Like, same sort of thing. We don't force people to do action steps. So it's not school. It's basically suggestions and recommendations. If you want to take your life to the next level, you'll commit to yourself in taking action. So we put them there. The people who are getting the most out of our podcast are the people who are actually executing and taking action steps and being accountable to those. So the choice is yours. More fitting a theme than stop procrastinating. I don't know what would be more relevant as a way to finishing up. So I hope this has resonated with whoever needed to hear this message today, and they take that learning and apply it to their life and help them to execute what is possible for them and what their true potential will be. So Adam, once again, thank you very much for being on the podcast with me, despite your camera going out basically 3/4 of the way through the show. I know you're here in spirit. I can hear you even though I can't see you. I want to thank everybody once again for joining us on our podcast. I just want to remind you that you can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and our extended Launch and Beyond community on these channels. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast or anything that comes up that we could be support with, please let us know. A lot of times your thoughts and questions are the same ones that everybody else has, but no one comes forward to ask those questions. They ask us individually and we share that, but it'd be great if we could put it out onto a public forum so that everybody could benefit. And finally, if you're enjoying the podcast and finding value in it, we'd be grateful if you go over to iTunes and leave us a review. What this will do is it'll allow us to reach a larger audience and help more people. So for me, just as I'm about to go on a beautiful sunny day and enjoy my afternoon here in Melbourne, it's goodbye and thank you.
Thanks, guys. And as Jim mentioned, we can get onto the Launch and Beyond website, so www.launchandbeyond.com/show notes to find out all the show notes. So thanks, guys. Have a great day.